Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to Frederick Hartnett School and our Wednesday, September 27th meeting of the Blackstone Millville Regional School District. If you would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would like to introduce the members of our school committee. I'll start with Karen.
Karen Vernon, Millville.
Jack Keefe, Blackstone.
Anita Lehue, Student Council President.
Tammy Lemieux, Blackstone.
Tara Larkin, Millville.
I'm Jane Reggio from Millville.
Alan Himmelberger, Superintendent.
Okay. And Anita will tell us what's going on in the schools.
Alrighty. So now at the end of September, everyone's really starting to get into the swing of things at BMR. Our homecoming weekend was a huge success. Our homecoming dance took place outside for the first time, and the bonfire was also relocated to the back parking lot. We thought these were great changes, and it's always so exciting to see all of the organizations and teams of our school being represented at these events. Chromebooks have officially been rolled out to all of the students in the high school, including our freshmen and seniors who didn't have the option last year. Students and teachers are really taking advantage of this new technology in the classroom and using it through lessons and assignments. So that's with school. And then this past weekend, marching band took home first place at our home show on Saturday, September 23rd. We're looking forward to competing again on this Saturday at Dartmouth High School and hopefully bringing home another win. Varsity football won their Friday Night Lights game against Burncoat this week. Or last week, I should say, 34-20. A highlight of the night was watching player Brian Sorrell walk on the field with the team and do the coin toss at the start of the game. After the tragic injury that he's faced, the BMR Hopedale community is really proud to see the recovery that he's making. And girls volleyball also took home a win a couple days ago against St. Mary's Senior High School, 3-0. We're really excited to see our Charger athletes starting the year strong. So that's what's going on at BMR.
Thank you. Any questions for Anita? All right, thank you very much.
No problem. Have a good night, everybody.
You too.
I am pleased we will now recognize some of our best and brightest. So, Mr. Himmelberger, it's all you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Reggio. The best part of being a superintendent is recognizing student achievement. And tonight we are very fortunate that we can recognize two of our students who have certainly achieved. Every year, the Superintendents Association allows the superintendents to give out the Superintendent's Academic Award for Excellence. And we do it in the beginning of the year so that the award can be included on college applications and transcripts. And typically we give out one, but I was faced with a dilemma because everybody said we had to give out two. And so I'm very pleased to introduce to everyone Haley Carroll and Heather Milliken, and I would just ask you ladies first if you could just come up to the table. You both have done so much, and this award is so well deserved for both of you. So rather than me do all of the talking, I thought that it would be great to hear from you guys.
All right, so I'm Haley Carroll, and during my time at BMR, I've been a class officer, the historian for my class for 4 years, as well as a STUCO member, and so I've worked on helping plan school events. I've also been an NHS member, and I'm currently the secretary, and it's really helped me learn about volunteerism. I tried out marching band my first year, and I did volleyball for 2 years, but I really found my home on the track team, so I really enjoyed running each spring. And Mr. Mack's SAT Prep Club really helped me, and I scored in the top 3% of the country on my PSATs. And thanks to AP teachers we have at BMR and the Saturday sessions that I attended last year, I scored 5 on 3 of my AP exams, and I'm now considered an AP scholar with honors. So that's what I've been up to.
Congratulations.
Wow.
You've been busy. Heather.
Hi everybody, I'm Heather Milligan. I'm a senior in the past 4 years of BMR. I've achieved a lot. I've been a part of the volleyball team for 3 years. I've been part of the National Honor Society for 2 years, which also helped me learn about volunteerism, and it's allowed me to have the opportunity to be a tutor for a middle schooler for the past 2 years as well. I've been a class officer for the past 3 years. I'm class secretary. I'm part of Principal's Council too, because I've made the high honor roll every quarter of my school years. I received a perfect English MCAS score. I'm currently enrolled in several AP classes, and I'm broadening my experiences with a virtual high school class. I have applied for the Tri-M Music Honor Society, so I'm hoping to become a new member of this organization. And I have also been the recipient of the Harvard Book Award this year.
Congratulations. So I didn't know quite how to do this because you both deserve the individual recognition, but short of having you come to 2 different meetings, I thought it would be easier if we did it at the same meeting, and hopefully you agree. So I'd like to present you with the awards. So this one is for Heather Milligan, Certificate of Academic Excellence. Having duly qualified under the standards prescribed by the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, you are hereby awarded the Certificate of Academic Excellence, and it is hereup the seal of the association and the signature of the Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And this one is a Certificate of Excellence for Haley Carroll, having duly qualified under the standards prescribed by the Mass Association of School Superintendents, who are hereby awarded the Certificate of Academic Excellence, and with this thereof the seal of the association and the signature of the Superintendent of Schools. Congratulations. Can I have one more? Thank you so much. As Haley mentioned, over 1.6 million students last October took the National SAT Preliminary Qualifying Test. And that's a lot of students across the country. We are gearing up for that same test in a couple of weeks. And Haley scored in the top 3%. And so she has been awarded a letter of commendation as a commended National Merit Scholar. I wish you both well this year, and I look forward to following your exploits. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Congratulations, ladies, and to the parents as well, because I know some of their hard work is your hard work, so congrats to you. And I love when I know some people, but I get a little teary, so that's all I'm going to say. Anybody else have any comments?
Congratulations, great work.
Yeah, we're very proud of the students we have here at BMR, and you guys are a shining example of that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Last week, we were presented with the idea of naming the Millville Elementary School courtyard, and we waited to hear from folks, and seemed like that was a very positive idea, so I will entertain a motion to do that if somebody would like to make it.
So moved.
Second.
Do you want specifics?
Yeah. You know what?
That's fine. I can just find the minutes of it. To name the MES courtyard in honor of Mr. Campbell.
Okay.
Yeah, just the
Yep. Any discussion? Oh.
Yep. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Nope.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? So moved. We will be honored to name that courtyard, and we'll let you do the work to get that all presented and fancy, Dr. Haughey, for those of you who don't know who I'm pointing at. I also wanted to take a minute to recognize the different parent-teacher organizations that we have here in Blackstone Millville. Many of you know that last weekend, the brand-new Charger organization, two of whom members are right here, spent most of their Sunday digging holes and pulling weeds and planting mums, and the high school really looks beautiful, but so do our other schools. The rocks around JFK AFM are very colorful, and you notice them when you're driving by. You know, it's not just a kind of a flip of the thing, and I know Millville was... the parents there had a weekend where they upgraded and planted flowers and dug weeds, and the parent organizations that we have really do a lot for the schools. And so I wanted to officially take a minute and thank them and say the schools look great, and they look inviting and they look welcoming, as they should. And so thank you to those parents who take their own personal time to do that. Anybody have any comments? All right. Public forum. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to move consent agenda A, warrants and minutes of the meeting from September 14th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Tara, seconded by Karen. All those in favor? Oh, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so moved. Consent agenda A. Please make sure we sign, because we're it for tonight. So, report of the superintendent.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Reggio. A couple of items for tonight. I wanted to thank some of our teachers who are here, Mrs. Schaefer and Mrs. Dubois, as well as our elementary principals, to fill us in on the changes that we are going to make for the elementary report cards. As you'll hear, this is work that's overdue, and almost every other district has made the updates to reflect the new standards and the frameworks. So I would ask if Mr. Tringali and Mrs. Brown and Dr. Haughey could come forward. Might need one more. Excuse me,
And all of the above.
We need some more
And the
chairs.
committee.
Mrs. Dubois and Mrs. Schaefer.
Yeah, there you go. She's not coming tonight, so, but thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for hosting us. This presentation really is more informational than anything for the purposes of why we're before you. We represent a large group of educators, administrators, and professionals throughout the district who really worked hard to bring the standards-based report card up to where it needs to be. We referenced a lot of work on the part of many, many communities in our study and in our research. And the purpose of this was to bring new standards-based report cards so we could provide more effective, efficient, and direct feedback on student progress and communicating how they're doing in the classroom as it relates to standards as established by the state, Common Core state standards, currently being known as Massachusetts Curriculum Frameworks and the like. A lot of work went into this on the part of our faculty and staff at JFK, AFM, and Millville Elementary. And I'm really, really proud to have with us tonight Mrs. Schaefer, Mrs. Dubois, with Mr. Tringali and Mrs. Brown, and myself here before you. We had a large group of people. Unfortunately, because of other commitments, things kind of got difficult. The meeting had moved on us, so it caused a little bit of difficulty. Our apologies in getting a larger cohort together for you. Standards-based report cards. The job of a report card is to clearly, fairly, and objectively communicate how a child's doing in school. A standards-based report card tells specifically how they're doing in school and what needs to improve. All teachers in a grade level measure student learning against set criteria. Instead of one subject, one grade, we're able to get more specific into skills, knowledge and skills that children are working to acquire in reading, writing, as well as numeracy and math and the like. As I mentioned, the Common Core State Standards Initiative was a state-led effort coordinated by the National Governors Association of Best Practices years ago and the Council of Chief State School Officers. The standards were developed in collaboration with teachers, school administrators, and experts to provide clear and consistent framework to prepare children for college and the workforce and beyond. That's their objective. In the early years, obviously, we're working on fundamentals and basics. And at the elementary level, whether it be kindergarten, 1, 2, all the way through grade 5, the teachers really worked very hard in kind of streamlining both vertically and horizontally the expectations for children and what we wanted to be focused on when it came to their standards and what we wanted them to be able to know and do. How is that a little different from standard traditional report cards, as you can look in the packet? One of the things, as I mentioned, every course or subject area that you would see, like math, there'd be a letter grade, and that really didn't give you a true reflection of anything going on. Strengths often were reflected by a letter, and then there was a couple comments put with that. This gets into more of the knowledge and skills and the skill areas, breaking down the standard and what we expect children to know and do at each grade level in the elementary years. So instead of one for math and one for ELA, you'd have now a little bit more precise strength identification in ELA or reading, as well as in writing. And then we would break it down as well into the different sub-cohorts of a standard. The letter grades used in traditional report cards are more subjective reflection of individual teachers' expectations for students and achievement. And why would we bother to move in such a different direction as opposed to under each individual subject? Well, it's just not possible, for lack of a better way of putting it, to see strengths and weaknesses when different elements of a subject are always grouped together. Again, we want to break down the knowledge and skills that we want kids to be acquiring. It's easier for us to have conversations also as professionals, to sit before parents in the community and say, by the end of grade 1, we expect all our children to be reading, to be writing, and to be performing math calculations at this level. And what's nice about that too is we can tweak vertically and horizontally to expectations, raising bars and expectations or moving them across according to what they know and can do. So again, it gets a little more precise. Without further ado, I did want to give an opportunity to the teachers to kind of speak to their individual grade levels, if that's okay, around grade 3 and grade 4 in particular. We're very fortunate to have Mrs. Dubois at grade 3 talk about some of the work that was done at grade 3 and how that fed into grade 4 with Mrs. Schaefer and others in grade 4. I think that would be a nice way for you to kind of get a better example of what we're talking about here in the bigger picture. Please.
Good evening. So as Dr. Hawkey said, I was really excited to be part of this revision committee last year, because for many years we've had a report card, which at one point was standards-based, but then those standards did change and they have evolved, and we found that it was no longer adequate and it didn't meet our teaching set anymore, our teaching repertoire, and it was hard to inform parents then of just what their student or child could and couldn't do without just lengthy narratives to go along with those report cards. So I was pleased to be part of the committee, and as Dr. Hawkey said, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth about how we were going to present the skills to the parents, how we were going to make it user-friendly for ourselves, for those parents, even for the students, because as they get older, they look at it and they try to make sense of it themselves, and we did want them to understand it. So what we came up with for third grade, I believe you have in the folder there, and we really, we took them straight from the Common Core standards. We did try to condense when possible, just so it wasn't every single standard that you saw, because that would not be user-friendly. So there were times that we were able to put multiple standards in one expectation, like the addition and subtraction to 1,000. We took several that mentioned addition and subtraction and just put it together and said adds and subtracts whole numbers fluently within 1,000. You will see on the math portion of our report card that there are some boxes that have X's or they're grayed out. I'm not sure just how you are seeing them. But that is because those are the skills that we do not get to in our math program until later in the year. And we had found with the previous report card that we were putting asterisks or we were leaving them blank. And then we were asking parents, like, are you not teaching these? Like, is my kid not getting it yet? And you don't have enough to report on. So we said, if we gray it out, then they will just know that it's not something that has been covered at that time. So that's what, and it actually is a lot. I mean, in third grade, the bulk of the third grade math curriculum is multiplication and division, and it truly is almost February vacation before we get to a different topic. So third trimester is filled with the fractions, the geometry, the measurement, the graphing, pretty much everything else that's part of third grade. But we were hopeful that that would be a little more clear to parents when they saw that and just said, oh, it's not supposed to have a grade at this point. We also, something that we changed, you'll notice that with each subject area, we added shows effort and meaningfully participates in activities and discussions. And there was a lot of discussion amongst all of us on the committee about that. Prior to putting this together, it was one of our learner behaviors, just shows effort. And we had a lot of talk, like I said, about, well, somebody may put more effort into math because they're really interested in math, and we may have to work harder to kind of light their fire in reading and get them to show more effort and participate more. So it was not really fair to the student to just give them one effort grade when we were looking at math and reading and writing and science and social studies. So we decided ultimately that each subject area deserved its own effort and participation grade. So that's why you're seeing that, which is definitely a change from our previous report card. Our ELA, we did the same thing. We looked at all of the standards and we tried to condense where possible while still getting all of the standards across to the parents, to the students, to ourselves. And again, you'll see a couple of grayed out boxes, and that really is just in the informational text because we don't really do nonfiction until second trimester. But from second trimester on, it's part of our curriculum. Any questions about the third grade changes and why we did what we chose to do?
It's an excellent point amongst kind of explaining some of the dialogue that happened, the professional dialogue amongst the members of the committee that worked on this. I think it's an excellent point where not every standards report card looks the same. So
Right,
ours is tailored to us and how we envisioned it.
And not every grade
I was going to say,
looks the
within the
same.
grade, there
Right.
are differences.
So did the grade representatives develop the grade ones?
Yes.
So we met after the committee developed everything, like the main standards of how we're gonna grade, we met as grade levels and we decided what was the most appropriate for our students and what we could combine, what we had to pull apart. Like the original report card was adds, subtracts, multiplies, and divides. That is way too big of a standard for one report card. So where, as Kate said, we did adds and subtracts, and then we did another one of multiplies and divides. And then, so we had grade level meetings, we discussed it, we brought everything back to the regular, like the general giant
big group.
committee, and then we talked about any other changes, then we brought them back to our grade levels, made those changes again, and came back. So every grade level, and like, for example, fourth grade, we don't have anything grayed out because we felt that it was something we want to run through a couple years before we gray anything out. So we felt at that point we want to kind of, and me being new to fourth grade, well, this is my second year now, but I'm still not 100% with where everything lines up perfectly. So we felt that it was best for us to wait a couple years, get it rolling, get it under our belts, and then put them in if we feel that it's really strong in that area. As
I
Kate
know
said,
another
we
one of
same-
the kind of the bigger differences is the learner behavior portion of it.
Fourth grade doesn't have any?
It's in the edit. We
Oh.
added them, and I don't know why it didn't. unless it's on this one.
The learner
Oh, it's on
behavior.
this, it's on my copy right here that I just got today.
Okay, it's not
On the back under. we
Right,
don't
mine's
have
under
that
the science. I know ours is under science. It
Not
just
under
it
science
just
and
is
social
right.
studies.
But again, that was a lot of conversation about that because the old report cards used to have a lot, and we felt that some were redundant, and a lot of the discussion that we had circled around, well, what is expected though versus what are they still learning at that particular grade? And that's why you'll see that like kindergarten and first grade, they have more, like they are not expected yet to like always be quiet and follow those directions, where we felt like at least at third grade and then fourth and then fifth, well, that's just expected. Like, do we really have to mark that? Like, that's just, they should know by this
Right.
time that they are expected to bring their homework back to school. So we might not have included something like that. And we also combined the respect for self and for others and for property, whereas before those used to be three separate ones.
Yeah, and while I would agree wholeheartedly that it should be expected that they will, as a parent, I want to know if they are. And I realize if there's a problem, I'm going to have gotten a phone call. But I also always felt good about telling my student, hey, they think you're doing a great job. And so it's a positive reinforcement as well when some of those
And the
things are
comment
in
section
say
will
there'll
not
still be a
go
comment
away.
box.
I mean, we will still have, where we can write that paragraph about,
So there'll still be a narrative.
There still is going to be a narrative
Yeah.
portion of it. And that's what we kind of said too. Well, we always say that, like we always say, what is their, what are they reading currently and what are some of their,
How they treat their
positive
peers.
skills just socially, and what are some things we can work on. And we said, well, if we're talking about it anyway, then maybe we don't need it there in the learner behaviors section.
And for like grade 4, we have 5, and ours are respects others' rights, feelings, and property, exercises self-control, organizes self and materials, which by 4th grade, now it's very important to start being able to find, a paper that you're working on, or your math book, more importantly. So we felt that that was something that was really important because 5th grade starts transitioning classes, and then they go to the middle school where they're really transitioning classes, and now you have a locker thrown in there. So it's a whole growth thing. And then we also have follow directions and uses time effectively.
Which is the same as
So,
Yeah, okay. And I assume 5th grade will have some.
Right, I think they
Similar.
get very, very similar. But there was a lot of conversation and back and forth. I mean, it took a lot of,
no doubt.
discussion and compromising even to arrive at what we've arrived at here.
one thing, the academic standards went from 5 down to 4. So, because we just kind of felt like it was also very similar to like A, B, C, D, F. So we often had that kind of, and then other people, we also had a discussion of the fact that the fine line between a 3 and a 4 were really close, and a 2 and a 3 were really close, so we just figured take that out, and then it would be much more clear.
But it's still, good luck. But it's still subjective. I mean, bottom line is.
It is.
It's still subjective. So
Right.
let me ask the question, how will parents be notified about what it all means, other than just receiving, would they get these questions and answers? Because this is a lot better than this.
That kind of feeds into where we're going, yes, excellent point.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
I'll let you go, and then I'll ask you more
It's
questions.
exactly where we're headed. So one of the things in developing this document, there's few things to be mindful of. One, our standards-based report card are they're living documents. So there are going to be tweaks and edits and changes that'll be made along the way. This isn't a one and done, we're done after this committee's concluded. At the end of, more than likely at the end of each trimester, the teachers are going to be communicating what's working, what's not, maybe some tweaks need to happen. But by the end of the year, we're looking to kind of look at what's happened and what's kind of flushed out in line with standard and what we specifically knowledge and skill we want kids to have acquired by the end of grade 1, 2, 3, and the like. And obviously, this being a living document, it's going to have some revision. So that's point number one I wanted to make. In terms of the communication of the families and the community, that's one of the primary reasons we wanted to come before you tonight. And this document is one of those things that I think is paramount in terms of answering some of the the concerns or, worries that parents may have, in helping them to understand that this really is about, really working to student strengths, helping them work on areas of need, and truly getting them to standards in what we want them to know and be able to do. With the superintendent's blessing, it's the ideal that we would get this out to the parents, and we would work to do that shortly. For the purposes of just the most, lack of a better way of saying it, like David Letterman's top 10.
Right.
Well, you got the top 15 questions for standard-based report cards in front of you. And this kind of encapsulates a lot of all of our work over the past year as a committee, and also kind of where we project going forward. Special ed was a consideration, and what does that mean for special ed? IEP, progress monitoring, and the goal reporting is clear. It's documented by law, so the progress reports still are in effect, as well as the report card at the end of each trimester. For ELL students, we follow those standard-based report cards, but the ELL teacher will provide a progress report at the end of each trimester as well. So those kinds of questions also are captured in your packet tonight. And the idea is hopefully that, with this dialogue, people kind of start to get their arms around it and working with us, and we continue to partner and build capacity with the community and the school working together. So
I know we had also talked about, and I don't know if we're still considering it, but we had also talked about including a parent handout, like even a glossary of terms that were, again, particular to the grade level. Like if they say the algorithm, like they might be like, well, what does that even mean? And like having algorithm with a definition with an example. So we talked about including a glossary of terms that are particular to the report card they're going to see, because it's the one their child is going to come home with, as well as questions like this, and questions such as like, can my child's grade go down within the same standard from one trimester to the next? And of course the answer is yes, because we may be working on multiplication right now in the 3rd grade, but we're working on facts. Next trimester we may push, and it's now word problems, and being able to extrapolate the information from the word problems and put it together in an equation and solve the equation. Well, they may have gotten a 4 because they learned their facts like this, but they're not applying them, so they may end up with a 3 the following trimester. So we wanted to make that clear, so including some questions and answers like that as well, in addition to this.
Can I ask a few questions?
You may. Go ahead.
I love standards-based grading. I thank you for including the learning behavior section and that part separately. I think one of my concerns with respect to grading, when you put that stuff in your social studies grade, is that the kid looks like a rock star because I signed his science safety form. So he's got 100 in science because I did my homework and sent it in. So the fact that that's separate, I think, is going to give us a much better picture of content knowledge, and so I appreciate that part. Are day-to-day assignments going to be graded using standards rather than any other form of grading? So if my kid comes home with his spelling test, is it going to have 100 on it, or is it going to have a 4? What's the day-to-day grading? Because I'm curious as to how you're going to get to your final number on trimester 1.
Jeez, that's my question.
Right. I know that as 3rd grade teachers, when we spoke as just a group of us, we did talk about having to switch our grading to reflect the report card and produce, and grade them with, right now I currently might use like check plus, check in, check minus, and turn that to a 4, a 3, and a 2. And 1, you'll notice, just means on this report card that it was completed with teacher assistance. It just is not something that they were currently able to do independently. So there are students who, we know that we have in our classrooms who will need a teacher to sit by them to get that. So then you would see, the 2 or the 1 there. But we did, as a grade level, talk about that. But of course, we haven't done that yet because we're waiting for all of the approvals, and then I suppose we all would have to meet and collectively decide. But I know we, as a grade level, had said, you know what, we're going to have to, instead of check pluses, check minuses, or 100s and 94s and 83s and whatever, we'll have to send work home now that has a 4 on it, that has a 3 on it, that has a 2 on it. so that the parents will know, well, geez, most everything came home that was 4s, so we should see a 4 on the report
Right,
card
and now
when the
we're-
report card is issued.
I was on that first standards-based report card way back. And that's, the other thing that needs to be discussed is between staffing.
Well, that was-
Because the first one kind of went out and it was kind of just there, and it wasn't like based on this is the standard. Now, this is the standard for the whole year, for the entire 4th grade or the entire whatever grade. So people were looking at it by quarter or trimester when we switched to trimester. So it needs to be addressed as a whole district staff so that we're all grading the same way. So that we're all doing, you know, if we're looking at it as a 4 for the standard, it needs to be the standard for the year, for where they should be for that. If it's a 4 for what you're teaching them at that point, it needs to be discussed as a staff so that people aren't doing it one way and another way.
Correct. And that was my question of how are the staff being trained on this? Because my biggest concern with a subjective, you know, and comparing apples to oranges, when you get when a student gets 100, 100, 100, 100, 100 on a spelling test, and in the old one, the spelling grade came back as a 3. You know, it's like, what am I missing?
Perfect example. So to that, what I would say is at that particular point in the year, end of trimester 1, December 20th, report card, standard-based report card goes home. The expectation is if it's 3 of 3 and the highest they could have gotten was 3, that's the snapshot if you saw hundreds coming the whole time.
Right.
And that's just the expectation in that window of work.
And I guess what I'm saying is that's what needs to be clear to the
Right.
parents. So in other words,
Right.
this 1 through 4 is based on a year's worth of work.
Correct.
Not based on a trimester's worth of work. Because if it's
Right.
based on a trimester's worth of work, and a student is excelling and getting the 100, whatever you're going to call it, check plus, check plus, check plus, it makes no sense that would be a 2 out of 4 or 3 out of 4. It just doesn't make any sense. And-
So our work is not done.
Correct.
Just because we've agreed on this and we're going to input into X2 and we're going to be able to complete this, our work is not done. So our next step is to come together, because you're right, some of this is very subjective. So how are we going to approach this? So we have to come to some consensus. There needs to be some consistency across grade levels, even though each grade level is very different and expectations are very different. There has to be some consistency. So we then now have to come back together as a committee and talk about these concerns, because we really worked hard. I mean, this was over a year's worth of work. And there were a lot of meetings with grade levels and a lot of meetings coming back. And one of the real positives, I think, that happened because of this is we were really communicating across grade level. And it's so important for us, and with all of our curriculum mapping that we are working on, understanding what's being taught at each grade level. Are there any holes? Where do we need to backfill? So that we know that we are addressing the standards. And this was just an excellent door opener for us to have those conversations. So we're going to be continuing with those meetings and really discussing the questions that you've asked.
And what's wonderful from our perspective, one of the discussions we had this weekend at our retreat was, you know, consistency not only across grade levels but across schools. And I mean, this gives much more detail to really compare the schools and the grades and the classes, and so I personally am excited that we're moving in this direction. I know it was a tremendous amount of work, and I can't imagine going through all those core standards and trying to figure it out. So I do appreciate that. Any other questions, anybody? Yep, go ahead.
So the 4 is based on where they should be at the end of that grade in that line item.
Yeah, and you'll see, like, for some grades, they grade out the box, so the expectation might be only 2 of 2 at the end of trimester 1.
Right.
And if that's the best, obviously they're getting all hundreds, or they're seeing some level of grading that's for that standard and what's being worked on in the terms of the knowledge and skills. The best they could get is the 2, with the understanding that by the end of the year, they should be getting a 4. Using that scale.
I think if that's the way you go, you need to really make that clear,
clear,
because parents
yes.
won't be
Yes.
happy with that
Exactly.
direction.
And tonight's the first opportunity we have to really
Parents
set
will
the
be
stage
punishing
and
their
set the
kids to
tone
get
for
to-
making
Yeah,
see it now.
things known.
And I will tell you, I mean, it's really, it's very simple things. It's, if you bring your A report card, you get a free ticket to the Red Sox baseball game. Well, I can't bring you an A report card because we get 4s, and 4s don't mean A. You know, it's little things that parents look at. And so, I mean, if my child, I'll speak for myself, came with 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and you didn't explain that 2 was the best she could do, yeah, there would be some there was electronics are mine.
Right, and I think that's why we did include the words, and I know that this then is a little bit different than what we were just saying. We did include the words, like a 4 was exceeds the standard during this marking period. So I mean, when I'm looking at that, I'm looking at like during the first trimester, addition and subtraction is, you should have reached this part of addition and subtraction.
Standard.
And that's why I said one of those questions and answers in the booklet is like, well, can my kid go from a 4 to a 3? And I know like that's important because the few years that I taught first grade, there was one and it was ABC, like knows the alphabet, like the alphabet. And I always felt like I had to include like a note by the second trimester, because during the first trimester, it was truly like, do you know A to Z? Can you match uppercase to lowercase? When we moved to the second trimester, it was ABC order. And that's a totally different skill and much more difficult. So I had many students who might have known their alphabet and they were getting the 4s and the 5s. And by second trimester, they were getting 2s and 3s. And the parents are like, if my kid knows the alphabet, my kid knows the alphabet. So we were including narrative. So that's why we included those words in this marking period, because it truly is like, what are they doing and accomplishing right now, September through December, December through April, April till the end of the school year.
And I would prefer to see that with that narrative. And if it is something that you didn't get to or didn't get enough of, then it is great. You know, then it's.
And that was one of the things we discussed because the majority of us were veteran teachers and had used both report cards, had used the old report card and this, that was one thing we had talked about, is the discrepancy between grading, and by adding in for this reporting period, it helped clarify some of that grayness. And another thing we did mention, I know we mentioned at our meetings, was training staff and training parents, because we did have at the last, when it rolled out last time, we did offer parent meetings, and I think it happened to be before I Meet the Teacher Night, but this we'd have to, but we did talk about training parents, because as you said, and as we've talked about the vocab, like all that stuff is totally different.
I agree.
And if we're going to use this, if we're going to get approval to go forward and use this for December, we will have parent-teacher conferences prior to that, so we will be able to include it in each one of our conferences, you know, give them a picture and say, this is what it looks like, and kind of walk them through it at the conferences.
That'd be great.
Is there a reason there's no final standard reporting? So we're talking about in this reporting period, the child was at, you know, a 2, and this one was at a 3, and this one was at a 2. But at the final, at the end of the year, the comparison has to be to the full standard. But you might not have measured all the same things that you measured you know, when you're talking about rote memorization versus applying, there's no final to say, you know what, the overall picture is here.
And that's a really good point. I mean, maybe we need to add a 4th column that just says overall, you know, and you're looking at the whole year, you know, collectively now.
And it sounds like an easy question, but then becomes do you average, do you do this, do you go highest, do you do trend? So that, I will tell you, will be another lots of conversations for you.
If I may.
Yes,
so
you may.
One of the things that, as we ended the work as a committee, I vividly remember as we were wrapping up, saying it's okay, we need to play with this and work with it, and as educators, as professionals, just really truly play with the work that we've done. And I think in teasing that out through this year, the last question in the packet you have kind of says, you know, this is a live document. It's a work in progress. It's all about us communicating, collaborating, and really kind of moving forward in an aggressive way about what we want our children to know and do at the end of grade 1, at the end of grade 2, and the like. So giving permission, like one person in particular, I can vividly see the dialogue and discussion. As they've said, it was really at times very back and forth, and it was healthy dialogue. But giving people permission, it's okay. You know, we're going to work together and keep working together to get this the way it needs to be, so it reflects our school district and our elementary schools, like you said, at JFK, AFM, and MES, across the board.
Across the board.
And that's what we were trying to get to. Yep. And having so many professionals come together at different grade levels and then also kind of work on the vertical was a big undertaking. And I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to work with everyone. We really did some nice work, you know, but it is a live document. It's not done. And, you know, provided the superintendent gives his blessing, we'll get it in X2 and get moving. I mean, that's the objective for us now in terms of next steps, and then rolling out and giving our professionals the time to work with it. You know, there's a lot of teacher leadership that came to the table. I can't thank, on behalf of the administration and the teachers who were with it, there was a lot of expertise brought to the table here. And it's really trying to capture all of it. We did the best we could. So again, it's going to continue to require some additional work going forward. And we really appreciate the time you've afforded us tonight to really kind of get the community informed and, you know, aware. That's huge, because this hasn't been done in a long time, as Mrs. Schaefer mentioned.
And has been necessary, and has been asked for, you know, by staff, by parents, by administrators. I mean, it's, and you can't say long overdue. The standards change, you know, every time somebody new comes up with something idea. But this process of informing parents so they can guide and they can assist and they can know, okay, you should be able to do this and you're not able to do this. So how do we make that happen versus, so-and-so is a pleasure to have in class. Okay, well, they're a nice kid, you know. So we do appreciate the work. We do appreciate the effort. I'm sure it will bring up many questions from parents, and we will send them gladly in your direction. But I as the chair of the committee, and I know on behalf of the committee, really do appreciate the work that you've done. It's a yeoman's effort, and really important to our students, to our district, and to our families as we try to really improve the standards, the scores, the learning. The learning of our students. So, any last?
May I have one? I just have one question, teacher related. I know lots of teachers were part of this committee to create this. Do you all, have an idea of how much longer it will take a teacher to complete the grading process at the end of a trimester? Has that been sort of thought about? I don't know in this district how much we give teachers, but I know when we at a high school level switched to this, there was lots of discussion about there is not enough time for this type, and you know, and then that's when we got better as teachers tracking where we thought that final grade would go as we went versus, oh, let me look at all this today.
We did talk about it, and that was why, like I said, in third grade, we really tried to condense some of those standards to make it not so overwhelming.
Okay.
And I know we also talked with just my third grade teacher colleagues that we would now, obviously our work is going to be tailored to the standards as it has been the last several years that we've had them.
Sure.
But now even, I know my grade book, let's say, is set up, you know, I have a tab for, you know, there's math, but within math there's every standard. So then as the kids are doing work, you know, I'm looking and saying, okay, this work exemplifies this standard, so it's going on this page in my grade book. So then I just can like say, okay, this is multiplies whole numbers. Let me flip to that one, how they do across these last few weeks, and
that will be critical to create creative grading at the end.
It's ironic.
So hopefully everybody's checking out your grade book.
Well, it's ironic.
Well, X2 should do some of that for you too, if you.
It's probably the X2 process
Not at the
is very
elementary?
long to get to standards based.
Oh, it's really good.
It's a process.
we know it's really good. We just don't get
It's really good for us old people. At adult ed, it just.
It's interesting, though, that question was asked amongst us, and as we open the year, you know, where are we? When are we going to be able to do this? As soon as we can get on a committee, get people informed, we'll get rolling. So I know there's some people, I'm not saying they're here next to me, that really wanted to, like, be in front of you like before we open school. So, but we had those exact questions, that exact dialogue that you're asking for. It's exactly what we were talking about, because they wanted to set things up right away so that they didn't have to reinvent midway through the first try.
Sure.
And again, I think it's a great question and right in line with what we talk about amongst ourselves. And it's very pertinent. So the opportunity for them to really play and work with the standards and the expectations for the students, for us right now, is paramount amongst our colleagues and as professionals. But, you know, also so we can begin our communication with the community. This is fantastic that you've provided us with the opportunity to come before you tonight. And thank you so much on behalf of everybody.
Thank you for coming.
We really, really
Yes.
appreciate this time.
Thank you. And so the public knows, we do not approve or disapprove, or we do not, it's not the purview of the school committee to move you forward on this, you know, superintendent and leadership team, but we certainly do endorse these efforts and appreciate them and think that we're definitely on the right track, and I look forward to some of those parent meetings.
And I'm sure that we will be able to update the committee as we go through the year, because I think that the big piece is communicating home and getting the calibration just right. And as you go through the year, as we've heard, it's going to be tweaks here and there, and I think it will be important to come back, certainly as we get close to the end of the second trimester, and really see where we are and how we're going forward. So I think that's a good goal to have for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You again.
Thank you all for your longer day. Thank you.
I am going to go out of order for a minute, since I have several principals here. October 16th is the online deadline for applying for cultural grants, and I know some of the schools and the PTOs have done that in the past, and so October 16th is the deadline for that.
Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you.
Moving along, you'll see the second one here is the district improvement plan. I would much appreciate if we can move that to the next meeting. There's a couple of other late-breaking tweaks that we have to do to that. So that's what we'll do, and bring it to the next meeting. The MSBA update. As you know, when you saw my goals, one of the three goals is infrastructure, and we have two buildings in desperate need, and that would be Kennedy Elementary and the high school. The other three buildings have large issues that need to be addressed sooner than later. And part of the size, the magnitude of the problems at Kennedy and the high school is that they haven't been addressed when they should have been many years before we all got to this table. And so we are fortunate that the Mass School Building Authority has approved the accelerated repair project at Kennedy Elementary. And with Jesse's help, and certainly with our head custodian, Mr. LaRose, we were able to document the condition of the building so that we will bring that forth to the community, to the boards, to the different committees, because that is a Blackstone challenge, and there is basically two projects within at JFK. So the accelerated repair project covers the boilers and covers the windows and the window treatments and most of the HVAC. That's reimbursed at 58% by the state if we meet all of the qualifications and deadlines. So hypothetically, if that is a $3 million project, then 42% of that $3 million is what the cost to the town would be. And again, that would be bonded over probably a 20-year note. The other piece of the renovations at Kennedy fall outside of the scope of the accelerated repair, therefore they're not reimbursable by the school building authority. And that would be the plumbing, the wiring, some of the engineering around the cooling of the building, carpeting, and flooring. So that piece of it would be completely borne by the town as a capital expenditure. So all of this is, as we are going forward, will run on parallel tracks, primarily mid-November through April, May. So we have basically two separate projects, one that is the accelerated repair project that is in the queue and going through the process with the School Building Authority. The other is a large amount of capital needs for Kennedy. And again, the best comparison I can use is that that building was built in 1965. And I believe at the time it was the first new school in Blackstone in 100 years, since the Civil War. And so that building, except for the roof and some minor cosmetics, has basically been untouched since 1965. I know I'm the only one that can remember that year at the table, but most of us live in houses that do not have heating systems and roofs and cooling systems and infrastructure that's 50-plus years old. So it is long overdue and will need to be addressed, but we are moving that project forward. And so there will be lots of meetings, lots of information forthcoming from November through April, May. The second major concern is the high school. And this is, again, a building that opened in 1970. And similarly to JFK, outside of the roof and some cosmetics, has been virtually unchanged. So the elevator, we have students in almost every building that will be needing, and certainly we have Bradley now up at the school, at the high school, that need that elevator. The company that manufactured that elevator has been out of business for 15 years. So if that elevator does not function, then I have a compliance with ADA, I have an accessibility issue, I have to go before the Department of Public Safety and swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, which I've done once in my career already, and it is a challenging process. So this project is a core renovation project, which can be added a much broader scope. And conservatively, we're probably looking at a $25 million project to renovate the high school. And that, again, is the original boilers. That is plumbing and wiring. But it also includes some curriculum enhancements, specifically the science wing and the science labs. So while these buildings have been maintained beyond excellently over the generations, it is time to get these done. I spoke with the MSBA this morning, and they said that I got an A for my submission on the high school, and they require no further information at this time, and the project is still in the queue. So the accelerated repair project at Kennedy is one of 73 projects submitted this year. The high school core renovation project is one of 83 projects submitted this year. And obviously, School Building Authority receives a lion's share of their funding from 1%, 1 penny on the sales tax. And so sales tax revenue, surprisingly but somewhat mysteriously, has not increased. And so at the state level, it is a challenge for the School Building Authority to decide how to spread a limited pot of money. And so I did give them the exact scenario, that we have students in wheelchairs that will be in wheelchairs for the next several years going through our schools. And if that elevator stops working, we are faced with a dire consequence. And so they got that message. I'm sure other high schools in the state have given them similar messages. However, I care about our high school. And so I will continue to make sure that they have all the information. So at this time, the core renovation project at the high school, the building authority has all of the requisite information they need. We had done a needs assessment study back in 2015, which I believe I can get new copies for the newer members. The older members have received that. That was an outstanding study because it included color photos of the areas that were in need, and that's what I submitted for both projects, and I think that's why both projects are still moving forward. It's hard to argue when you see in black and white or in color what the deficiencies are in that building. So those are the two neediest schools right now in terms of quick and careful attention. Not to say that Maloney and Millville Elementary, as well as this building, which probably has the least amount of concern right now, but certainly this building is now almost 15 years old and will have to plan for a systematic maintenance plan and additional capital down the road. So at this time, obviously Millville Elementary has a couple of key pieces to that, the oil tank piping, as well as some of the fire suppression. We also have a water tank issue that seems to be the gift that is continuing to give. But those are also issues that we can't ignore and walk away from. The same with Maloney, with some of the interior upgrades that are necessary. And that building opened in '88. So we have a lot of infrastructure needs that we're going to have to really continue to get our arms around and continue to document, and then present presentations to, in the case of Kennedy, to the Blackstone voters and the Blackstone boards, and obviously at the high school, both towns would own that. That core renovation, the beauty of that at the high school is they could hopefully, if the project continues on that track, the entire cost would be reimbursable. So at the high school, that $25 million for a round guesstimate, if they incorporated everything that we have in that request, the state would pay, if they continue at the reimbursement rate, 57.74%, 58%. So the towns would then have 42% of that 25 million. So roughly 10 and change. So it would be somewhere around 7 million plus for Blackstone and 2 million plus for Millville. Again, wouldn't have to be bonded until the project is nearing completion, and then it's bonded over 20 years and we pay it back like a mortgage. However, we then get buildings that are maintainable and educationally sound for the next generation without having to deal with the expense of building new, which now is well north of $80 million per building. So we have a little time, but we don't have a lot of time. We have cooperation from the School Building Authority. We are checking with them on a regular basis, and we will be able to keep communicating back to the towns as we get to our checkpoints mid-November through the spring.
And those checkpoints are for the town to like approve dollars or for actual work?
Yeah, so what happens is there's a whole list of documents that are required, and the next one would be funding for the next phase, not for the entire project, but for the schematic phase. And once we get that information from MSBA, then we simply set a vote for that from the town. It's not going to be, I have to be careful here, it's not going to be a big number, but it's certainly not going to be something out of petty cash. So that would require, and it does require a town vote.
Special town meeting.
Yeah, it does require a town vote. But then we have to make sure that that high school project stays on the radar, because typically, so we applied for the ARP projects in a February deadline, we applied for the core renovations in an April deadline, but it takes the whole year and then some to go through all of the process. We could very well, in mid-December, be told by the school building authority that our high school project did not make the cut this year because there was other buildings around the state that were deemed to be in more need for the limited resources. And we would know that in December. Now, you have examples across the state where there are some communities who have been waitlisted by the school building authority year after year, and they finally say, you know what, we don't have the luxury of waiting until you might open up a seat for us, so we're just going to fund it ourselves. I don't believe our towns have that ability, nor would they want to take on that luxury of that much debt. So our best case scenario is that the high school core renovation gets approved, and we would know that before Christmas. We would know that sometime mid-December.
And if by chance it does not, we would submit it again?
We would submit it again for the next deadline, which would be probably mid-April. But then it's another
Year.
Now, again, I don't know this to be fact going forward. What I experienced in Oxford with a similar older building was we couldn't wait for the approval for the reimbursement to be included in the project. We went ahead and replaced a 50-year-old heating system. And we let MSBA know we were doing it, and at the time, that project was able to be included as reimbursable in the final project.
You did that
even though it
with
was a year
school
later.
money, like district money, or
That was the town.
The town had to step in on
voted
that
it.
one.
And then because we were replacing it, DEP gets involved, and you got to take out old oil tanks and make sure that they're not leaking, and if they are leaking. So we did that, and that was reimbursable. Because the state knows that you cannot wait with certain building systems. Obviously, the heating is and the HVAC is one of the keys. So that's where we are right now. As we go through, I would expect that everything becomes much more in focus as we get into November and December, and we'll certainly be communicating that both to the towns as well as to all of interested folks. I would expect that we're going to put information up on our website as well as be in front of town boards to present the conditions of the building, the scope and sequence, and where we go from here. But I think at the end of the day, the buildings have served our students well. It would have been nice if we could have addressed them earlier so that we could be maybe a little more in front of the funding availability, but we can still get there. Just have to keep the pressure on to make sure that we are, especially with the high school project, because there's a lot more dollars involved there, and certainly to be able to include all of them as part of a reimbursable project is key.
Great.
So
Thank you.
that's everything that you were afraid to
And
ask
then
but
some.
wanted to know about MSBA and the infrastructure updates. I also included in your packet my goals for the year. It is going to be, and it has started out to be, a challenging year, trying to manage what was the assistant superintendent's position as well as the superintendent's position. There are 3 major goals, and certainly one is the concern over enrollment and making sure we market ourselves at every grade level, at every school, but especially at the high school, that we have every educational opportunity and then some. The award winners tonight are just an example of what can be done. And so we know we have to do things a little bit differently, but that's a key piece of it. My second goal is around funding and budget. I don't know why I was so fortunate in my first year here that we got a budget that we could live with and had a 2.2% increase and was able to be voted in a timely manner. And no one called me names. But the second and third budgets were a far different challenge. And I appreciate how hard it is to finance public education in today's environment when two legs of the three-legged stool are broken. And that would be the state and the federal levels of financing. And I have said it before, it puts way too much stress on local municipalities that depend heavily on property tax to be able to come up with the necessary funding. And so that second goal will be to expand upon the communication with both towns, with the committee, and to get all of the concerned folks on the same page to see where we go and how we move forward. I know that there was a request for a 3-year plan, and that will be forthcoming by the November 9th meeting for the committee's review. That's going to be a 3-year plan that covers everything. That's going to cover where we've been, where we're going, how we're doing, what we need from an infrastructure standpoint, projections for curriculum, technology, instructional materials. There is lots that can be done differently with public education. We are still rooted in high schools that were invented in the 1900s to 1920. We still have a school calendar that's based in an agrarian economy. We still have requirements that are not in keeping with a 21st century world. And one of them is the 180-day requirement. We're one of the few developed countries that has that few school days. Most other countries are 200+ days of school. With technology and now the fact that most of our students have access to technology, and certainly our high school students now have no excuse, why can't we do the work on a snow day and have that count as a regular school day? I know it's too late for Mr. Keefe, but that could happen, you know? And I think that there's a lot of ways that we have to look at traditional public education from the policymakers, and I don't see a lot of that forthcoming from Washington currently. But even at the state level, there is no money. There is no money, and there are other states far worse off than we are. You only have to look at Connecticut to see a state that is in such financial straits that they're trying to push off retirement that was funded by the state and give that bill to every town in every city in Connecticut. So the funding piece and how we look at public education has to change. I mean, we have to do it differently because we're doing it the same as we've done it for 100 years. And the world is a far different place than it is now. We have to have public and private partnerships because in our economy, the businesses are sitting on a lot of money and a lot of brain power. And we have seen in Massachusetts alone 17,000 jobs, technology-related jobs, that are open right now and cannot be filled. So that's why the Department of Ed and the Board of Education are looking at computer science and technology-related coursework as becoming foundational parts of the curriculum, because we can no longer have electives that dabble in this or that. We need to make sure we have digital citizenship across the district. We have to make sure we have how to write computer code as a required course, because that's where we're going. And we have to have a bit more vision at all levels. And I think at least now the state realizes that fact, that in Massachusetts, which we always pat ourselves on the back that our students perform at a level at the top or near the top in every test in every grade around the world, and yet we have all of these jobs still waiting and unfilled. So that funding piece is going to have to be a goal that I will continue to move on. I testified in July at the Joint Committee on Education because they have to hear the impact of what districts are facing. And they certainly heard about what we are looking at.
But we also have to face the reality of what districts are facing, and that is a reduced budget, and in our case, reduced staffing.
Yep.
And we need a 3-year plan that outlines where this particular district, not the federal government or the state, where we need to go with our communities to make a difference in the lives of these students. And there are some things on the horizon that we need to make sure that we will be there when it's necessary to put them in place.
Absolutely.
And the funding has to be there. And so we've got to get people around the table.
Yep.
And the conversation has to move forward.
Absolutely. So those are my 3 main goals. I think the committee has probably similar goals, but it's certainly, maximizing and understanding the funding. It's addressing the enrollment and marketing ourselves as not the last choice, but a pretty darn good first choice for students to achieve what they need to achieve, and then the infrastructure, which is, those 3 are going to take a tremendous amount of work to get to the end of that. So that's where I am, and again, the details will be forthcoming as I map them to the specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and tracked measurements. And I think that is my report. Coming up this coming Friday, October 6th, is a no school day, as it's a professional development day for our staff. And we are very fortunate that we have been able to partner with some of the other area districts. So there are some PD offerings at Foxborough High School. There is a tremendous nationally known speaker in Mr. Bill Daggett speaking at Bellingham High School. And we've got social emotional learning being offered at Nipmunk High School. And so the Blackstone Valley Consortium has done a really nice job of putting together, first, a calendar that everyone gives the same day off on, and then the opportunities for staff to be able to get some pretty terrific opportunities. And then Monday the 9th is Indigenous Peoples Day, or whatever we're going to call it, and no school on Monday as well. So that's it, and that completes my report.
Very much.
Thank you.
School committee forum. Does anybody have anything they would like to share?
I have some stuff.
Karen? Okay.
So I recently touched base with Mrs. Kurt and Dr. Hahi, and I got some updates that they were hoping to share out with people about what's happening in their schools. Dr. Hahi wanted to highlight a program that's happening at Millville Elementary School right now. Bi-County Collaborative is renting space there, and the 4th and 5th grade MES students are pairing with students at Bi-County in a mentorship program, and each week both the MES and Bi-County students come together to work on tasks and learning activities in a fun manner, and they're using it to provide social, emotional, and learning opportunities among the school, and they think it's going to be a great learning experience for everybody to see where it goes. They did this last year with just the 5th grade, so this year they've added the 4th grade in as well. And they bring them together and they do lots of fun activities. Sometimes they're outside doing recess stuff, sometimes they're doing learning-based activities, but they're creating a really good partnership with somebody, a new group that's in the building, to make them feel part of the whole instead of outsiders. So he wanted to highlight that. He also wanted to let people know that he has a newsletter on the MES website, which can be accessed through the Bmrsd website, and he updates it monthly, and it's there, so people should go and look for it. And then Mrs. Kurt was excited to tell us that following up with the seventh most important thing, which was the summer reading One School, One Book project, that they were able to Skype with the author, Shelley Pearsall, thanks to the PTO, and that kids were able to come up with 20 questions that they wanted to ask her, and that went very well, and the kids were excited to talk to the author and see that, and it was organized by Sarah Tasker, so thank you very much for that. And one other thing, let me see, that on the 15th and the 22nd of September, students donated money to help Smith Middle School in Houston, Texas, and they're proud to say that they raised $200 in those 2 days, which is pretty impressive as a whole. So they're going to be sending that out to help with the damages and supplies that they need after Hurricane Harvey. And also, finally, on September 19th, Meet the Teacher Night happened here at the middle school, and Ms. Blanchard's class completed Operation Kind Words, where students wrote messages on Post-it notes and posted them on the display case in the lobby. And when the parents came, you were able to take one and bring it home to your child so that they would have it. And then the chorus sang a kindness song during morning announcements to kick off the whole school all-year participation in Project Kindness. So, lots of cool things happening.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right. Our next meeting, Thursday, October 12th. We will start our budget process, district improvement plans, lots of fun things. At this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to move into executive session for discussion around union personnel. Is there a motion?
Will we be adjourning from executive session?
We will adjourn and not return.
So moved.
You can put in your motion. Okay.
Second.
All right. Moved by Jack and seconded by Tara to move into executive session, at which point we will adjourn the meeting from the executive session, not to return to this meeting. All those in favor, roll call. Tammy?
Yes. Yes.
Tara, yes. Jane, yes. Jack?
Yes.
Yes.
Karen, yes. Okay, so moved.